Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I'm Tirso and I'm a creative director based in New York City. This is part 3 of how to produce a photo shoot. In part 1, we went over the beginning stages as well as booking a team and budgets. In part 2, we went over everything you need to do before the shoot. If you haven't done the work in parts 1 and 2, I highly recommend you go back. You'll save a lot of headaches and stress on shoot day. I remember my first time directing a shoot. I flew to Boston for a Gillette campaign. I did some work beforehand, but I was still petrified going into it. I had a shot list with me, but did I know what I was doing? Definitely not. I was very timid, and life is very tough when you're an introvert. To set you up for success, in this video, I'll cover what to watch out for, things that I tend to do, and how to handle some of the surprises that can happen. Ultimately, it'll be up to you how you want to direct, and that will change as you gain more experience with photo shoots. I also made a guide for you, which you can download in the description below. I'm not gonna lie, this video was a whole hot mess to organize, so the order might be all over the place, but I promise everything is there. I hope. This is a little silly, but I suggest wearing neutral colors to set. If you haven't noticed, I'm always in a polo. One of my shoots, there was some red in a photograph and we couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't a what, but it was a who, and that who was me. I was in a red polo and it was bouncing off one of the boards. I have not worn a colored polo on set since. All right, make sure to arrive on set at the proper call time. Hopefully you remember to order catering so it can be set up for the team. If you have a producer, they can help out with this, or even one of the assistants. I just don't think it should be you. It's not because you're above this, but you have other responsibilities to take care of. First things first, say hello to everyone on set. All the team should be setting up, the photographer building the set, the prop stylist should lay out everything on tables. If you have a food stylist, they should also start prep for the food. If you have model or talent, hair and makeup should be started. I have a section on working with talent later in the video. I usually go around to touch base on everything, talk to the photographer about the different lighting situations and the different setups. When it comes to props, go over all the props with the stylist so you know what's available on set. This also allows you to move faster as you can prep for shots coming up. For the food stylist, I peep in to see what's cooking, but I'm really there to just see what can be eaten later. It usually smells really good unless it's cauliflower pizza. After touching base with everyone, I put up the pages of the pre-pro doc and go over the shot list and the schedule. Just a heads up, you will almost always run late on shot 1. The team is getting used to everything. You're probably waiting for feedback on the client, which won't come until after shot 1, but it's okay, you'll catch up later in the day. According to the schedule, shot 1 is slated for 10 a.m. Make sure you start on time, or if the team's able to, they can start a little bit beforehand. I usually let the team do their part first, laying down props. They'll let you know when they're ready for you to have a look. The photographer should start taking some test shots. One thing that's super helpful is to provide the Digitech or photo assistant with the proportion of your final images. If you're shooting social, it's either going to be square, maybe 4x5 for something a little more vertical, or 9x16 for stories. If you have set proportions like I do in a print magazine, provide them and make sure you have some wiggle room by pulling back a little bit on the camera. There's also a situation where you'll need multiple crops. We can look at that into context here. This is the original crop we took of the setup. I know that I needed this for social after. The Digitech should be able to show you the different crops on set so you can adjust, and it's just an overlay. Here's the actual crop at 16:9. I also looked at this as a square. This crop is fine, but I actually preferred this one. Regardless, I knew that I had both options. Make sure you never leave set unless you're confident that you've captured everything you need. Once you've started, you're basically just going shot by shot. After each shot, send a preview to the client for feedback or approval. If you're shooting a model or talent, I would do a quick edit of maybe 6 or so shots and send a screen grab. As you progress throughout the day, the turnaround time will become much faster and faster. It is your responsibility to keep the team on track. I would say that closer to lunch, you'll have an idea if you'll finish on time or not. As I mentioned, shot 1 might actually take you 2 hours. Definitely fit in shot 2 before lunch. If they're both approved, the afternoon will go much quicker. Some notes on lunch. How could I possibly have notes on lunch? I try to cover as much as possible, so just take away whatever info works for you. Lunch should be an hour. For me, hospitality goes a really long way, and an hour midday is a nice break for everyone. Lunch is an opportunity for you to connect with the team on a more personal level. No specific conversation here, but just some conversation. I don't, however, like to talk about the shoot. I think it's important for the team to take a mental break midday. Also, as creatives, ideas tend to marinate in the back of our minds and come together pretty quickly later on. Back to the pacing of the day. There's instances where the morning will go fast and you're able to sneak in 3 shots before lunch. If this is the case, just keep the day moving and wrap early. I'm sure your team will appreciate that. What if you're running late in the day? It definitely happens. I had a shoot where I was on set from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. This was also in studio, so it was pretty depressing to be in a room for that long. It is helpful if you book a team that you actually like working with. When this happens, go back to your internal team to see if you can find more budget. 4 hours past wrap time is effectively another half day. I know budgets can be tough, so if you're not able to do this, you can also compensate by booking them for another project. Preferably that project has a larger budget. If that's not possible, perhaps it's a project with the same budget, but easier to execute. I once made a promise to a food stylist that the next project I book her for would be so easy. Conveniently, my next project was with Planters peanuts. You're not cooking anything, you're just pouring peanuts. I'm totally joking and oversimplifying, but this is much easier than making souffles. For the photographer, perhaps it's a project where the lighting setup is the same the entire time. For prop stylists, maybe it's a project where the client provides a majority of the props. Just do what you can, it'll build a nice rapport with the team and they'll want to work with you again. I'm gonna start with still life. Still lifes can be product, beauty, or food. Food shoots are my absolute favorite. If somebody asked me, what is your dream job? I would probably respond, I don't dream of working. Anyway, the general notion for still life shoots is to let your team start the build for the photo and then adjust what's not working. I say adjust because unless the setup is so bad, you really don't want to mess with it too much. The strongest art directors know how to fix a photograph. The ones that don't know what they're doing try too many setups and then the team gets confused. Let's go over some projects that I worked on. I'll go over the notes that I had for the team as we built each image. This was a shot for pomegranate overnight oats, and this is what the crew put together first. For this, I thought there were too many jars, so we removed one, and I also thought I could use some fabric. The prop stylist added a spoon. I wasn't really sure about it, so we tried a few different positions. And then we found a better placement. The spoon was too high, so we pushed it down. I thought this showed too much handle, so we turned it. I don't like tension between elements, so I was staring at this moment here. The pomegranate was also getting cut off on the right. I was still thinking about that spoon, so we tried adding 2 more spoons since there were 3 jars total, and we adjusted to this. There's a gap in the center here, which is dividing the setup into 2 separate images. I want all of the elements to work together as one. Instead of moving things around, I asked the stylist if there's anything we can put in the middle here. The food stylist actually added some honey. It wasn't reading well back there, so I brought it forward. A few notes here. I want to bring the spoons forward. A scooch is too much, so I call it a skosh. The honey needs to move away from this jar, and then this pomegranate needs a little bit more love, so I asked to turn it more towards the camera. And here's that update. I like the addition of the pomegranate seeds on the table so we can add more in the back. It was forming a line here, but I want it to feel more natural. We committed to using the seeds, so we placed more in the back left and then moved the ones in front of the jar to the napkin on the right. And here's the final photograph. To compare where we started, the option on the right is a more developed photograph. It's definitely a combined effort from everyone on set on how the photo comes together. Here's the desk setup I was working on for Staples. This is pretty built out as it is. Vanessa Vasquez was my stylist, and man does she work on set. The wall surface we had wasn't wide enough for the desk, but it's an easy extension to do in post-production. This folder in the middle felt too plain, so we needed more images in this area. I also thought the photo needed more color. She added a yellow notepad and a green post-it to the board. I wanted to clean up the papers a bit. The bottom was feeling nice with so many things, but the top was feeling a little empty. All I did was ask to add more, and I just let the team do their thing. We sent this version to the client for approval, but they commented that we needed to swap out the mouse. Womp womp. With that change, we now needed to add some height so that the headphones went up. In commercial work, we're not allowed to use book or movie titles, so we flipped the book around. So we got this far. I had a pretty big change here, which I should have caught earlier on. I didn't love that the plants were both on the same side. I had her make the swap, and we got to here. I was already happy with the setup, but we had some tiny adjustments for the final photo. So let's look at the before and after here. I have to give major props to the stylist. She really did the most with this, and it turned out great. PSA to save our libraries, track your water intake, and just let your team do what they do best. For the most part, when you're shooting on figure, you're looking at pose, angle, their face, and clothing. When it comes to the pose, try some standing up or sitting down. Watch out if they're standing too tight. Maybe you need them to take up more space in the photograph, and their pose should reflect that. This can also be done with fabric and props. You can also try some poses with movement. Perhaps they're walking or dancing, and then also try some different hand placements. Just some things for you to consider. You don't want to contrive this because their movement should feel natural to them. When it comes to a model, just let them do their job and don't interrupt the flow. After a set of shots, maybe go over some with the Digitech and make sure that you have options for you to make selects later. For the face, watch out for lighting. You want it to feel natural. If their face is faced too far away from the light source, it can cause a harsh shadow. Conversely, if they're facing the light source too much, you want to balance that out. Smiles for the most part are fine. I would watch out for gum. Some people have really big smiles. I know that that's part of them as a person, but in a photograph, the only thing a viewer is going to stare at is their gum. Now that I think about it, this might just be a personal objection of mine because it reminds me of a horse. Hair. This can get tricky, especially if you're using a fan. Just make sure it doesn't look messy or covering anything up. Flyaways are generally okay because you can clean it up in post-production. For glasses or spectacles, definitely check for reflections. Your photographer should be able to handle this. In extreme cases, you can take a shot without glasses and then strip it in later, but it always looks weird. On set, do as much work as possible. Clothing. Watch out for wrinkles or bunching. Hopefully your wardrobe stylist pulled the right size. You can certainly cinch in the back, but I find that you constantly have to adjust. This should go without saying, but make sure the focus of the outfit is heroed. I once had an art director who did a shoot for Nike. There were 6 people in the shot, but when I looked at the film after, you could hardly see any of the shoes. My take was that they just shot it wrong. What they should have done is shoot every person individually and then comp them together so they have more control. This is actually how Vanity Fair shoots their Hollywood cover. They shoot everyone individually and then comp them in. In a group photo, there's always one person that's off and you know who you are. Yes, I'm in a different polo because I couldn't get through the entire recording yesterday. This is such a long video, so here we are. All right, working with talent. Anyone that you're shooting should be considered talent. This could be a model, an influencer, a CEO, or a celebrity. When working with talent, your #1 goal is to make sure that they're comfortable, which is how you're gonna get the best results. I would say that this is my biggest criticism for a particular show called America's Next Top Model. I don't find that they make the models comfortable, and then after, they're berated for why they didn't get a great photo, but I digress. When you're scheduling call time for your talent, be mindful of your day's schedule. They should never feel rushed, nor should they ever be waiting. Being able to manage this is what makes you a professional. If they're coming hair and makeup ready, don't have them arrive with the talent, have them arrive an hour later when everything is set up and ready to go. If they need hair and makeup, book someone they previously worked with. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last video, so I'm just mentioning it now. Hair and makeup can be really sensitive, so you want someone that they're comfortable with. I've worked with models that I'll say are overposed or stiff in their movement, which can make it really difficult. When shooting people, I consider a picture versus a photograph, that a picture is an image of something and a photograph captures a moment. Music helps a lot here. Anything you can do to keep them moving. Remember that the model is your canvas and the clothes are the focus. So are there moments when the talent is the focus? Yes. Portraits. Portraits are often posed. The goal is to capture the essence of them. The setting should also relate to them as a person. If you're shooting a CEO, perhaps it's in their office. If you're shooting a musician, maybe it's in front of a piano or one of the instruments that they play. Talent can be very exciting, but it's not always fun. Here are some issues you might run into. First, let them ease into the shoot. Take a few shots, and then I usually have them step offset and then step back on. It's really interesting what happens when you do this. It's like they get out of their head and they relax a little bit more. If you find them stiffening up later on, do the same thing, have them step off and then step back onto set. So what if that doesn't work? Just talk to them. They're people and you're the director on set. Again, this can be really difficult if you're an introvert because the job forces you to go out of your comfort zone. How I usually handle this is I'll pull them off set and I use a line, and that line is, tell me a joke that only you find funny. Do whatever you want, but find a way for them to relax. You can't really force anyone to do anything, but there's still a job to do, and if you miss something, it falls on you. I had a shoot where I needed the talent to redo a segment. The response to me was, no, I liked how I did it the first time. Fair, but my sound guy signaled to me that it might have been interrupted. I responded that I would absolutely use the first cut if it's fine, but I just want to ensure that you sound and look your best. Diplomatic, but still polite. So what if that doesn't work? I've also said I won't be mad if you don't want to, but it'll make me really happy if you do, which is my passive-aggressive way of putting my happiness in their control. Some people don't want that responsibility and they just do it. Say what you want, but do it with confidence. You'd be surprised how much drama can happen on set. Somebody breaks up with their boyfriend, somebody gets sick, the celebrity brings 5 looks that you absolutely don't have time for, the talent decides to get in a fist fight with hair and makeup, and then you have to book an emergency glam squad with the realization that you booked someone to get clocked in the face. I may or may not have experienced all of these, but in the event that you do, try to take control of the situation. Read the room and tread lightly. If somebody needs to cool off and regroup, let them. It's better than forcing them to take a photo while frustrated. I always get sugar. Sugar calms people down mostly. Whatever they want, I will acquire it. You want a cronut, I will send someone to Dominique and Sal and get you one. You'll have your own way of dealing with issues. I wish you all the best, but you'll learn how to deal with them over time. Shooting on location can present a lot of challenges. The best way for success is to do a lot of prep beforehand. As I mentioned in the last video, it's important to do a scouting day of all the locations so you have less surprises. When you go to each location, plan the exact angles you want to shoot so that you have a sense of your frame. You should also check weather. Weather is super unpredictable and there's not much you can do about it. The sun also directs the light source if you're shooting talent. Perhaps it's too bright of a sun, or if it's overcast and you don't have enough sun. Also, if you're shooting talent on location, be mindful of the time you set up for portraits. Morning or later afternoon is usually best. You don't want to shoot anyone midday where it's super bright. You also don't want to shoot them at the end of the day when they're tired. Lastly, try to permit a location. It's hard to control the people passing by in the back. There could also be a photobomb there. Hopefully it's in a way that you can remove in post, but just something to watch out for. Everybody has a role on set. Your photographer is there to control the lighting, and it should go without saying that the photograph should be clear. All of your stylists should have some influence in the respective areas, clothing, food, or props. You've hired them to do the job, so just let them. There are some art directors that rely heavily on retouching. What a silly group of people they are. They often struggle when things don't work out in context, and they're also the ones that blow up the budget. I like to do as much work as possible on set. When I'm done, all I have to do is drop everything into place. There are a few things I find to be okay to do in retouching, which is shooting plates. Plates are objects or backgrounds that you plan to strip in later. For Starbucks, the coffee needs to look its best. We couldn't get rid of the reflection with the setup, so I shot a plate of just the coffee without reflections to strip it in like this. Now, why do I say this is okay to do? It's because it's very light retouching and it also doesn't alter the original image. I'm actually pretty solid at retouching. I learned quite a bit during my Teen Vogue days, so I usually handle a lot of it myself and I don't end up using any more budget. I will go over post-production in part 4. There's an old carpentry proverb, measure twice, cut once. Apply that here, never leave set unless you're absolutely confident that you've captured everything. For those of you assisting with photo shoots, pay attention to how your creative director constructs a photograph. It'll help your growth into becoming an art director. Learn everything you can, even if it's as simple as how the photograph is affected when you bring the camera down. You can also learn how to talk to the crew respectfully. If you disagree with how your creative director handles things, then you can learn how not to treat a team. Just adding this as a friendly reminder, this is a part of the job that you've probably looked forward to and worked towards to achieve. Most of my favorite moments have been when I'm on set, so go live the dream. As I mentioned earlier, time of day really matters when it comes to shadows, but I need to get this video done, so we're just gonna go with it. This series is gonna take me out. We got through part 3, it's a lot to manage, but it'll become easier over time. Consider what I mentioned mostly as suggestions. Every shoot is different, so just feel it out. In part 4, I'll go over post-production, which is mostly working with images and some light retouching. Don't forget to download the checklist in the description, drop any comments below, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on part 4. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.